Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, I am pleased to present our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, as he presents Collateral Damage, Casualties of Unam Sanctum and Doctrine of Discovery. Let's receive him.
Islam. We're going to discuss tonight collateral damage due, because it's really due to the ongoing and the entrenched Unam Sanctum operations, with most of you who are teachers and scholars and researchers and adepts are already aware of, being at the basis of the politics, not only of the Western Hemisphere, but actually, for the most part, 90% of the operations on the planet Earth have been coming or functioning under Unam Sanctum policies, etc. The Roman Catholic Church bulla of the demon-bred priesthood, etc. Now, collateral in its nature means something that's associated with or set aside or branch or supportive or an ancillary related, but not considered main or focused thing, object, line, machinery, etc., or principle of social engineering, body politic, etc. Now, collateral damage is also a phrase that's used in military operations, whereas in the military operations, the aggressive or the active military operatives would consider destroying living beings or property or areas, land, or things that are not related to, rightfully, to the intended target, but is generally taken as a sacrifice or considered as par for course for sacrifice. And so when you hear politicians refer to when they're making incursions into other political jurisdictions, lands, etc., and you see them make or hear them make statements like collateral damage in war, they're talking about innocent people or who die, who are injured by virtue of their activity, but are rightfully not the target and are actually innocent. And the one of the reasons we're discussing that is because many of our people on multiple fronts have been injured severely, politically, economically, and socially by virtue of wrongs done or violations done or crimes against humanity done in the name of government sovereign powers, etc., or government political jurisdictions and military logistic operations, etc. Now, the things that we're going to talk about are, we'll note a few documentations, including Executive Order 11490, particularly since the United States government corporation has went bankrupt again in 2019 again, and by law and international law, they actually have no right to operate whatsoever. However, many of you know that they continue to operate and they continue to have elections to dead offices that were in fact from the beginning of their operations, particularly since 1871, de facto in the first instance. And we have the unfortunate situation where particularly the Aboriginal people of the land the people of Canaanite Moabite descent, commonly referred to as Moors, falsely presented as Indians, blacks, Negroes, colored people of color, etc., Latinos, etc., who are actually Moroccans or the real Americans, and also falsely referred to as Native Americans. You know, it's like saying real water. No, if it's water, it's water. You know, Americans are Americans, and those who are not Americans are not Americans. It's like you wouldn't say necessarily Native Asians, you know, or Native Africans. You say Africans. You say Africans. So that's collateral damage. The collateral damage is both the misinformation that has been passed from generation to generation that has been a severe economic injury to our people. And so I'm going to I'm going to look at certain notes of their own documentation, which I will present to you in quotes of their operations, so that most of the people who are listening and people who come here and share the evenings with us at the House of Reawakening Minds, and also those of you who may come on the official office hours of Dr. G, she'll deal with a lot of different issues of trying to help humanity, etc., which is basically what we're trying to do. We want to share with you the documentations in some of these areas to give support to the positions that we hold in relationship to the entertainment of and exercise of rights unalienable that already belong to the people, that many of the people are not aware of. Now, of course, this information is nothing new to all of you who've been sharing with us, because we've been teaching this stuff for 40 years, truthfully. However, because of the political atmosphere that's taking place right now, particularly with the people being under biological attack by people who they falsely have assumed was their government, I find it necessary to touch bases on some of these things. And particularly, again, because some of you being attacked by corporate operatives who actually should not be doing business whatsoever, but are claiming to be government, that are putting tyrannical rules and mandatory civil actions against the people to injure you and your right to feed your families, and your rights to travel, and your rights to do business and trade with each other, in violation of human rights, in violation of international law, in violation of constitutional law, in violation of treaty law, and in violation of humanity at large. And so all of this is given to you with the forethought on your part, and write this down, keep in mind, particularly, though most of you know this, for those of you who don't, the Congress adjourned sine die, March 27th, 1861. That's the Congress for the United States in treaty operations to do business on the land, North America, in trade, etc. The persons holding those positions of authority via treaty and constitution breached their honor, breached their oaths of office, and actually secretly and some openly began misprision activities to overthrow the republic and to deny or to abridge or abort their obligations to the treaties that supersede the Constitution. And as you all know, the Constitution for the United States comes from the Honesty Confederation of Aboriginal Moors at North America that has been reconstructed in history as being Indians, etc. And so also the Honesty Confederation is also referred to in Reconstruction as the Iroquois Indians. And so the Constitution principles of fatwa come from divine principles of Hermetic law, which is the culture of the people of the earth, for the most part, of the Aboriginal people, and all of the people derived from the Manti, Mandinka, etc., Phoenician tribes of Africa, with the Berber linguistic groups, etc., that have been occupying or domiciling at North America and around the planet for multiple thousands of years, not a couple, multiple compound thousands of years, etc. So the principles upon which we have operated government are well established, and they are in their general form what you would call Hermetic in their character or thought, as you would look at in ancient Hiqupta, that is also referred to as Egypt, etc. Those principles of divine law brought into a civil level, which we would call legislated or ens legis operations, etc. Principles of jurisprudence, harmonic with the divine laws of nature that recognize the allodial principle and principles of the human form or the spirit man exercising the experience in the physical form, etc. And so the principles of the Constitution for the United States are very, very ancient, while adopted to operate at the North or at the North Gate, at the Maghreb, etc., must be recognized that these principles have been abridged by persons claiming to be Congress and senators. So 1861, the Coup d'etat, and most of you already know about the plotted and planned assassination of Abraham Lincoln. You also know that Abraham Lincoln was the last lawful president for the Republic. After Abraham Lincoln, there was no lawful president operating the corporation operations on the land in harmony with Constitution, treaties, etc., to this very day. And as we're speaking now, it's 2021. One of the problems that you have is most of the people, having been misdirected and miseducated, are still operating mentally from the concept that these people who have been causing them injury, who are openly causing them injury now, really openly, the problem that they have is that they don't understand that these people are not their government, never been. They've been self-serving themselves and private parties around the globe under the Unam Sanctum operations. And over the decades, for this last couple of centuries particularly, they have created so much of bedlam and din upon the planet Earth that civilization now itself is being threatened. However, it's also the duty and responsibility of those who know, and it's also the duty and responsibility of those who are part and parcel of organized government to tell the truth about what's going on, in order for the people at large, those who would be willing to no longer consent to fraudulent political platforms that essentially cause injury to themselves and to their families, to their estates, and of course undermine the legitimacy of any legitimate governmental form or format, etc., which causes a state of what you would call institutionalized misprision and treason by virtue of intent on those who have taken oaths of office and breached, but by default with many of the people who are political parties or parts of these operations who do not know that the United States Corporation Company is not the country. It is a trading company doing business by virtue of treaty at Morocco or at North America. And that Constitution for those operations is the Constitution for the United States, not to be confused with the contemporary operations of misprision of the Circle Church and Chancery, which has been taught to the people, referred to as the Constitution of the United States, which is a private distortion of misprision for the purpose of continuing collateral damage and thievery and extortion and pilfery and false taxation in violation of national law and international law and treaty law, and actually constitutes crimes against humanity. And so we're going to bring up some of these things to give you a concept of the collateral damage. So collateral damage, as an example, let's get talking example. Like say, for instance, if you have a flower pot and, in your window and you're on an upper floor of a building and you decide that you don't want that flower pot because the flower died or something like that, and you just wantonly thrown it out the window and it struck someone on the ground, or it splattered and cut someone who was walking by with the pot shattering, that would be called collateral damage. You're responsible for that. However, it may have been and may not have been your intention to cause injury. However, that's called collateral damage. All right. So in political jurisdictional matters, when you have, say, a defunct or dissolved corporation operation, whereas, say, executors or board of directors of a corporate entity that was dissolved or disintegrated or adjourned sine die, and they move to another area and continue operations in order to project the guise of sovereign right of authority, and then tax the people. They're robbing the people and then using that finance actually to build a machinery, a political, legal machinery, both judicial and legislative, and use against the people to blackmail them into defense systems that are really not designed to defend them, but to cause them. Pharmaceutical systems that are designed to actually make the people sick so that they can extort from them forced financial debts and bills, etc. Well, the fact of the matter is that has been going on since the 1800s. In fact, not fictional, in fact. So let's go to Executive Order 11490 and actually read their own operations. Now, this was essentially constructed under the Democratic Ku Klux Klan party operations of the Democratic Party, with the considerations of the missionary military works of Bedford, etc., which you can do research on. So I'll read their own documentation so that you can understand the politics that are taking place now, and also why, like say, when they want to do biological attacks on the people, you will hear them say things like, we want to make sure that we do a pharmaceutical attack on the Black and Latino communities. These are tags. Keep that in mind. When you hear terms like that, those are biological war attacks. This is their own documentation so that you can understand that what you may assume to be some decisions that are made currently, that these positions were already in place, that these politicians are not your friends, they're not your government, they do not have your best interests at heart, and they have no authority to do what they're doing. However, this is their own documents. I quote unquote, this would be in Silent Weapons, Executive Order 11490, and this is page 48 on, this is what all of the politicians sit in secret, both federal, state, and local, and plot and plan executing in targeted communities. Consent, the primary weapon. Diversion, summary. Media, keep the adult public attention diverted away from the real social issues and captivated by matters of no real importance. Schools, keep the young public ignorant of real mathematics, real economics, real law, and real history. 3, entertainment. Keep the public entertainment below a 6th grade level. Work. Keep the public busy, with no time to think back on the farm with the other animals. An interjection. This is their words, but I'm interjecting this. It must be remembered that they are operating under what is known as animal husbandry. We'll deal with that in another class. However, animal husbandry. Research that and understand their operations toward you, toward your family, toward your children. And this is why they treat the children the way they treat them. This is why they deliberately, not accidentally, miseducate them. This is why they do not teach the children basic etymon degrees or etymology, period, nor orthology, to prepare them for the workload that's put on them, which is demonstrated in the General Education Board of 1902 philosophy page available to all adults who've been sending your children to these people who you thought were your government, who are not. Back to their words, quote unquote, consent, the primary victory. A silent weapon system operates upon data. And keep in mind, you keep giving them your data, and you think we require you to give us this data because we need to make your peanut butter sandwiches just this square. And you keep playing, and they're weaponizing it against you. And keep in mind, they're not your government. They just told you they were. A silent weapon system operates upon data obtained from a docile public by legal, but not always lawful, force. Much information is made available to silent weapon systems programmers through the Internal Revenue Service. See studies in the structure of the American economy for an IRS source list. This information consists of the enforced delivery of well-organized data obtained in federal and state tax forms, collected, assembled, and submitted by slave labor, provided by taxpayers and employees, and furthermore, the number of such forms submitted to the IRS is a useful indicator for public consent, quote unquote, public consent, an important factor in strategic decision making. Other data sources are given in the short list of inputs, quote unquote, short list of inputs. Consent coefficients, numerical feedback indicating victory status, psychological bases. When the government, quote unquote, and keep in mind they're de facto, is able to collect tax and seize private property without just compensation. Why are they saying that? Because they know that they are not government. It is an indication that the public is ripe for surrender and is consenting to enslavement and legal encroachment. A good and easily qualified indicator of harvest time is the number of public citizens who pay income tax despite an obvious lack of reciprocal or honest service. Amplification, energy sources. The next step in the process of designing an economic amplifier is discovering the energy sources. The energy sources which support any primitive economic system are, of course, a supply of raw materials and the consent of the people to labor and consequently assume a certain rank, a certain position, a certain level, or a certain class in the social structure, i.e., to provide labor at various levels in the pecking order. Keep in mind, animal husbandry. Each class, in guaranteeing its own level of income, controls the class immediately below it, hence preserves the class structure. And this provides stability and security, but also government from the top. As the time goes on and the communications and education improve, the lower class elements of the social labor structure become knowledgeable and envious of the good things that the upper class members have. They also begin to obtain or attain a knowledge of energy systems and the ability to enforce their rise through the class structure. Now, this threatens the sovereignty of the elite, i.e., the de facto government imposters. Keep in mind, they're aware that they're imposters, but they know that the people don't know that they're imposters. Now, if this rise of the lower class can be postponed long enough, the elite, and this is what they choose for themselves, they refer to themselves as the elite, can achieve energy dominance, and labor by consent no longer will hold a position of an essential economic energy source. And until such energy dominance is absolutely established, the consent of the people to labor and to let others handle their affairs must be taken into consideration. And since failure to do so could cause the people to interfere in the final transfer of energy sources to the control of the elite, it is essential to recognize that at this time, public consent is still an essential key to the release of energy in the process of economic amplification. And therefore, consent as an energy release mechanism will now be considered. Now, that is Executive Order 11490. I'm just moving the page so they can look at both pages. Now I'm going to go into the Corporation Excise Act of 1909. Keep these timelines, dates in place. Because remember, 1909, those of you who are scholars, you already know when the letter was written to Secretary Roots in 06, and he referred to how the Moors lost their birthright by virtue agreeing to the Nationalization Act. That would be the 14th Amendment operations. That's totally connected to this. So keep that in concept. Then 1909, 1910, when the operatives with the misprision was meeting again on Jekyll Island, etc., with members of the Circle Church and Chancery and the Crown Order, representing the de facto Queen of England, etc., in their Trinity relationship with the popes of Rome and the bishopric, etc., and of course with their operations of transferring or solidifying the Unam Sanctum seat of operations in Washington, D.C. at the Seven Hills that Pope gave them, etc., near the Potomac River, for their operations of their corporation, which they reestablished, etc., after the overthrow of the Republic via the overthrow of the Lincoln administration. Now, at that time, they did Corporation Excise Act of 1909. And for those of you who are students of jurisprudence, that the Corporation Excise Act of 1909 was adjudicated in the Flint versus Stone Tracy Company case 220 U.S. 107, and that was in 1911. 31 Circuit Court or Supreme Court, 349, wherein the Supreme Court said, and pay attention to this because this is very important, because this is where many of you are even presently in collateral damage and may not be aware of it, etc. Quote unquote, the tax under consideration may be described as an excise upon the particular privilege of doing business in a corporate capacity, i.e., with the advantages which arise from corporate or quasi-corporate organization. And requirement to pay such taxes involves the exercise of privileges, unquote. Now, put that in perspective, and then you understand why when the political operatives of the Coup d'etat of 1861 and their corporate successors will always communicate with the general people of the land in mail with all capital letters, because they're declaring you a corporate ward. Keep that in mind. So when you look at mail coming to you in any form, in any so-called tax form or any alleged coupon, quote unquote, which they don't tell you, bill, coupon, bill, it will be in all capital letters. I'm showing you why it's done, so that you can make your decisions and take your responsibility to stop consenting to being misrepresented as a corporation that is under the wardship of their bottomry instruments of the Circle Church and Chancery, registered or operative in at Fleet Street, England, etc. So therefore, all legislation concerning taxation, etc., by the people not knowing the collateral damage operations, are not aware that those decisions are made in England. They're made in England for the corporate operations of the United States Corporation Company, which has been misrepresented by the politicians as the country, which it was not and is not. And it's defunct. That must be made aware to you. You must be made aware of that. Now, so the reader is strongly and wisely advised to thoroughly research and study the etymology and the definitions of the following words and phrases, and use a good law dictionary and an unabridged dictionary, a thesaurus, and be sure to take notes. I'm going to give you 19 words just for starters. Review this if you have to. Go over this so that you can start repairing, because we're going to need a lot of healing, because I'm telling you right now, a lot of things are going to be coming out in these coming months that are going to verify all these things we've been telling you all for years. However, the interest of why we're dealing with this collateral damage tonight is because many of these people who are criminals, who have been pretending to be government, are on a missionary operations of injuring the people rather than to be, as you might say, found out for who they really are. And that includes the priesthood who've been working with them too. People who you've trusted that in many, and it's not just one, all the so-called religious organizations who have been living wealthy at the expense of the widow's pennies or at the poor, when you find out their real connections to these people who you thought were government, and that you thought these people were so-called godly, and you find out that they really were partners, They're desperately trying to keep the public from really finding this out. However, all this information is coming out anyway. However, our interest is that the masses of the people have limited injury by these people who are intentionally injuring them and willing to sacrifice them as collateral damage to protect their own criminality, also their own exposure. So keep these words, just these 19 words, write them down and research them so you can have a good comprehension of what we're discussing at this particular cycle of time. 1, excise. Excise, that's E-X-C-I-S-E. 2, taxes. 3, corporation. 4, capacity. 5, requirement. 6, privilege. 7, rights. 8, constitution. 9, person. 10, personality. 11, unalienable and inalienable. Those words are relative. Unalienable and inalienable. 12, jurisdiction. 13, pecuniary wages. That's very important in this subject at this moment. Pecuniary wages. 14, in propria persona. 15, fraud. 16, unconscionable. 17, artifice. 18, de facto. 19, de jure. Keep those in mind, and they will lead you to other law and legal terms that would be very important to you to reduce the collateral damage to yourselves and to your families. Now, I want to continue and deal with the misrepresentation of the 16th Amendment for the excise tax, coming from the excise tax, and the misrepresentation of natural people as corporate entities in order to impose a tax under de facto or color rule, color of office, and color of authority that has been the basis of the economic stock market since 1913 era, operating with a de facto and already dissolved corporate entity known as the United States of America Corporation, and has been operating since then, and has in fact been bankrupted again twice since then. Most of you already know this, but what they've put it this way: they not only put insult on injury, they put injury on insult on injury, and the people have not caught on yet. Now that things are collapsing literally around them, many people do not understand that they're being sacrificed politically and economically, and they also want to, they will say reduce the population rather than say genocide the people out. All right? To cover, in other words, they're willing to kill the people to cover up their own criminality. So Amendment 16 of 1913. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on income. Now keep in mind, this is the excise tax. From whatever source derived without apportionment, which is already unconstitutional, among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. Now, the history of the enactment and subsequent ratification of the 16th Amendment discloses beyond a doubt that the intent and the purpose of the 16th Amendment was to tax income derived from government-granted privileges, and particularly from corporate activities, and the profits arising from the quote-unquote sale of commodities, and the profits arising from those sale of commodities and the capital assets. So let's write this down so that you can stay very clear and keep up where we're going with this. The income tax is specifically and only addressing corporate activities of the sale of commodities and other capital assets. Fact. The 16th Amendment and the corporate activities, operations, and the sales of commodities activities and the taxing relative to that did not expand the taxing authority that already constitutionally exists, not whatsoever. It only clarified the arguments and the limitations of such taxation. And for those of you who want to do some research, I'll give you another case that you can look up. It will be Pollock, that's Pollock, versus Farmers Loan and Trust Company. 157 U.S. 429, 158 U.S. 601, that's 1895. And the Supreme Court has declared the Federal Income Tax Act of 1894 unconstitutional for want of apportionment, because income, quote unquote, and property, quote unquote, parenthesized capital, were indistinguishable, and an excise tax cannot burden property for want of due process. Repeat. Supreme Court for the United States, 1894 and 1895, declared the Federal Income Tax Act of 1894 unconstitutional for want of apportionment, and an excise tax cannot burden property for want of due process. And later, in the Speckles Sugar Refrigeration Company versus McLean, 192 U.S. 397, 1004, the Supreme Court declared and ruled and affirmed that the Congress for the United States has the delegated power to tax, quote unquote, income arising from the government granted privileges of incorporation. This is why they have fraudulently been misrepresenting and committing estate and grammatical violations against the people by writing their names and appellations in all capital letters to misclassify them as corporations under their defunct corporation, and thus being able to liquefy or make fungible their estates for their own purposes, being that they, the people, are declared foreign corporate entities without their consent, without their knowledge, and by virtue of misrepresentation, which is why they do the all capital letters when they send instruments to your homes, etc., through the mail, which is also mail fraud. Now, having this suffered defeat, this is the de facto Congress. Having suffered defeat in the Pollock case, the Congress was apparently aware of, but pretended to be unaware that it could tax corporate profits or they may have, because of other political compromises and considerations, chosen to feign an oversight of their limited delegated taxing authority. And so public officials know that a profit on investment or on a return above principal expenditures, quote unquote, constitutes an income. And the labors, listen to this carefully, the labors and the pecuniary compensations of the common worker and common citizen is not income. I'm repeating, this is the rule. Public officials know that a profit on investment or return above, quote unquote, principal expenditures constitutes an income. And even then, as you can see, it's limited. However, the labors and the pecuniary compensations of the common worker and citizen is not income, is not income, is not income. The right to work is not a privilege. Supreme Court ruling. The foregoing can be verified from the pages of the Congressional Record of the Senate of 1909 as follows. June the 16th, 1909, S3344. June the 17th, 1909, S3377. June 28, 1909, S3900. June 29, 1909, S3935 and S3936. June the 30th, 1909, S3976. July 2nd, 1909, S4043. And during the debates which ensued, the Senate frequently adverted to the Speckles sugar case, Supra, as a standard upon which to pattern the 16th Amendment. And consequently, the 16th Amendment, SJ Resolution 40, and a Corporation Excise Act, HR 1438, 36 Statute 112, was introduced on June the 28th to 29th of 1909. And so the express purpose of the 16th Amendment was to avert once and for all the issue presented in the Pollock versus Farmer Loan and Trust Company Supra, i.e. under the 16th Amendment, income and property capital were not and are not synonymous. See why they miseducate you? And see the collateral damage that has been done to targeted communities over generations, where local and state and federal persons claiming to be legitimate government have actually robbed the people for their own personal gain since 1913, and far beyond that since 1871, and they have built massive wealth on it and then used that very wealth against the people while claiming to be government, when in fact they are color of office, color of authority, and legislating under a color of law. And all the miseries that you all are running into right now is the collateral damage of that great fraud and lie that continues to this very day. And it's been done maliciously. It's been done knowingly. It's been done with local and state politicians well aware of it. Now you understand why they have been running campaigns in the numbers of millions and millions and quadrillion millions of dollars for jobs that compensate only a couple of a couple of 100,000, and why within a short period all of them are wealthy, and you wonder why your communities are targeted. And then you have poor people, you have homeless people all over the place, you have women struggling with children, because the de facto magistrates who've been pretending to be constitutional judges, who are not, actually have stock in private prisons under silent weapons for quiet wars, and they have been deliberately, and it's in their own documents, breaking up your families and running the men out of the homes for the purpose of human trafficking. So now it makes it available for the women and the children to be vulnerable to corporate state operations, and under the guise of human services, they've been stealing people's children.
They've been trafficking.
That's exactly what they've been doing, and that's a fact. Now, many of you always knew this, and many of you are in denial. However, the consequence of these things having gone unaddressed are now destroying societies. And you, me, and we all have been collateral damage. However, one of the problems that is greatly damaging to people is that many people trying to be in their minds what they thought was, quote unquote, although that's still improper, good citizens, were paying taxes to destroy their own families and being poor in the process. Collateral damage. That's what it is. Now, also, let me go a little further so that you can understand this is not opinion. This is their own documentation. This is congressional records. This Supreme Court cases. This is executive orders. And you see some of these politicians writing all kinds of executive orders now, and these people are still unaware of what executive orders are. They don't even know that they're not even constitutional. However, let us go on, because this is to try to help the people. But you must help yourself, starting with stop consenting. Hold on. What is income within the meaning of the law of the 16th Amendment of the Constitution? Now, in relation, and I have a lot of other law cases here to support. The decision relative to the Supreme Court is noteworthy since the court reviewed and relied upon most of the foregoing case laws and citations presented before arriving at its conclusion. As an example, again, in the Goodrich versus Edwards case, 225 U.S. 527, that's 1921, the Supreme Court defines income as follows. The Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, they were de facto, but still, the definition of quote unquote income approved by this court is, quote unquote, pay attention to this, you all, the gain derived from capital, from labor, or from both combined, provided it be understood to include profits gained through sale or conversion of capital assets. That's the Eisner versus McCumber case, 252 U.S. 189, 207, 441 Supreme Court at 391. Now, the gain derived from quote unquote labor contemplated in this Goodrich case, however, supra, and in previous and subsequent cases where the phrase is used means the actual gain or profit derived from contracting the services of laborers or employees. And this refers to gains acquired above and beyond the principal investment. Above and beyond the principal investment. Moreover, the pecuniary, and this is important, pecuniary wage, that's P-E-C-U-N-I-A-R-Y, that's pecuniary. Get very clear on what this is. That's why they don't teach you civics. So the pecuniary wage considerations or compensations which, quote unquote, natural persons derive from salaries, employments, wages, and occupations are not pardon me, they are not income. They are distinct from and not included in the aforementioned definition of income. There we go. That's the law. Law is. That's the law is. You want to know why your families are poor? You want to know why they're poisoning you? Do you know that the U.S. corporation went bankrupt again in 2019, and that they've been operating unlawful, and that's the real reason why all of this other confusion all of a sudden arise up to cover up the fact that they went bankrupt, and that the federal employees retirement fund was the last large financial holdings under the United States corporation. It's gone. So all of a sudden you got this all this stuff going on. Everybody getting sick, and everybody got to wear 1 mask, 2 masks, 3 masks, 4 masks, 5 masks, 6 masks, when they know that viruses are 10,000 times smaller than the fibers of these masks. Just as an example for people who keep consenting to what they know is a fraud, and you know is a fraud. But if you're willing to sacrifice your family members and your children to these people, then keep in mind you're consenting. And don't blame some mystical devil, because ain't no mystical devil done nothing to you. You've consented to these evil people who are actual demons who have missionaries in your communities who knowingly take oaths to the popes of Rome and pull you into the pits of hell and ignorance. And they call it a pulpit. They don't even hide it. And you pretend that your miseries is coming from some mystical devil, when the pits of hell is actually the executor's chambers that's operated from England beneath all the churches. That means these places that you thought were holy places of worship have executor's chambers beneath them to punish people who haven't been paying these excise taxes to these fake government operatives who've been pretending to be government, who are actually warring against the people. That's why they call it silent weapons. And that's only an aspect of it. Now, that's a fact. Now, for those of you, because you know we have a lot of people who've always known this information, they won't teach it because it doesn't make finance for them. And then you have others who always claim to love the people, but you'll see them, they'll never put their necks out on a line to get out here to help the people. They will be on armchairs and talk through other people to criticize the people who are really doing the work. But they have a lot of titles, though. And they've been doing this stuff for years. But you don't never see them, do you? And they don't produce literature, do they, to help the people? But they got a lot of things to say about the people who are doing the work, don't they? They're called armchair authorities. That's kind of a de facto position, too. It's another reason why we're showing you some of their own documentation. Now, this is their opinions of you coming from the cottonwigs of the Whiggamore Party that you know best as called the Democratic Party. And that is not supporting the Republican Party either, just because I'm telling you this history, because this is the truth. This is their position with you. For the persons who call themselves Democrats, this is their papers on how they deal with you. And this is what their opinions are of you. Logistics. The successful application of a strategy requires a careful study of inputs, outputs, and the strategy connecting the inputs and the outputs and the available energy sources to fuel the strategy. And this study is called logistics. A logistical problem is studied at the elementary level first, and then levels of greater complexity are studied as a synthesis, of elementary factors. Now, this means that a given system is analyzed, and such system is broken down into its subsystems, and these in turn are analyzed until by this process, one arrives at the logistical, quote unquote, atom, the individual. Now, this is where the process of synthesis properly begins, and at the time of the birth of the individual. Subtitle: The Artificial Womb. From the time a person leaves its mother's womb, its every effort is directed toward building, maintaining, and withdrawing into artificial wombs various sorts of substitute protective devices or shells. The objective of these artificial wombs is to provide a stable environment for both stable and unstable activity, and to provide a shelter for the evolutionary processes of growth and maturity, i.e., survival, to provide security for freedom, and to provide definitive protection for offensive activity. Now, this is equally true of both the general public and of the elite. However, there is a definite difference in the way each of these classes go about the solution of problems. Subtitle: The Political Structure of a Nation, Dependency. The primary reason why the individual citizens of a country create a political structure is a subconscious wish or desire to perpetrate their own dependency relationship of childhood. So they hire politicians to face reality for them. Summary: the people hire politicians so that the people can, 1, obtain security without managing it. 2, obtain action without thinking about it. 3, inflict injury, theft, and death upon others without having to contemplate either life or death. 4, avoid responsibility for their own intentions. 5, obtain the benefits of reality and of science without exercising or exerting themselves in the discipline of facing or learning either of these things. They give the politicians the power to create and to manage a war machine to, 1, provide for the survival of the nation/womb, 2, to prevent encroachment of anything upon the nation/womb, 3, to destroy those citizens of their country who do not conform for the sake of stability of the nation/womb. And politicians hold many quasi-military jobs, the lowest quasi-military job being the police, which are soldiers, the attorneys and the CPAs next, who are spies and saboteurs who are licensed, and the judges who shout the orders and run to close the union military shop for whatever the market will bear. The generals are industrialists. The presidential level of commander-in-chief is shared by the international bankers. And the people know that they have created this farce and financed it with their own taxes, quote unquote, consent. But they would rather knuckle under than be the hypocrite. And thus a nation becomes divided into two very distinct parts: a docile subnation and a political subnation. The political subnation remains attached to the docile subnation, tolerates it, and leeches its substance until it grows strong enough to detach itself and devour its parent. That's your politics.
Remember what we heard them say today about, I don't know if you heard it, but the guy was given the meaning of politics.
Mm-hmm.
Poly means many, ticks means bloodsuckers.
They are. Now let's keep in mind when you start looking at Supreme Court cases and you look at what income is and income tax is, it's consent to fraud. They're telling you it doesn't apply to your labor. It doesn't apply to pecuniary wages. It applies to foreign corporations doing business by virtue of capital investment, and not so much the investment, but the profits made on that is the only thing that is income. And they've been telling people that their labor is income. They've been telling people that their pecuniary wages for services and trade is income. And they lied. And the people are suffering collateral damage on a massive, beyond massive scale for having participated and continuing to participate in a known fraud, and they're tearing your families apart and then sacrificing your babies. And then you're acting like some devil did this to you. And you keep consenting it to it. And then when people tell it to you, you act like you don't know what they're talking about. It's called collateral damage. So since you consent to demonology, why should you complain about the consequences when you're reaping what you keep sowing? You agree to unum sanctum. You agree to doctrine of discovery. Then you pretend you don't know what it is. Then you fakedly go along with BS and keep calling it racism and prejudice, which it is not. It's unum sanctum operations. And you keep calling your labor compensation and your pecuniary wages income. And then you keep signing papers claiming that you have income, and now you've committed a fraud. Now they can hold you to it because you keep on signing papers saying that you have income when you don't. Then they use it against you again to destroy you. And you keep cooperating. And here's the law supreme telling you that your labor and your pecuniary labor is not income. And then you teach it to your children. And then say that they're educated. Then you wonder why you're in this trouble right now. With all this collateral damage, look at the communities now. Look at the broken families. You thought they were broke before the fake pandemic. Look what's happening now. It's called collateral damage. However, it was intentional. It wasn't accidental. Now you have a choice to deal with the higher principles of your ancient mothers and fathers and turn back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers, or you can go along with the earth being cursed, which is what's happening right now. However, the decision is yours. However, the responsibility is also yours. So don't start looking for somebody to start carrying the cross for you. If you're still breathing, you're still achieving. So let's get some work done. And thank you for sharing with us tonight, because this is what it's about, collateral damage. So let's discuss some of this.
We also talked about the fact that while it was targeted at the Asiatics.
Conversation that we had today.
With two.
Now it's, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like they say, and it's so true, there's no honor among thieves. No honor among thieves. People who were benefiting for decades and generations at the expense of the Moors, branding us blacks, Negroes, Native American, everything to remove us from treaty protections and constitutional protections and right of estate, and in order for them to legally, not lawfully, misclassify our people as minors, and our people didn't know it as wardship tenures so they could steal their estates. And a lot of people have been benefiting for decades. What they didn't expect is the de facto operators to turn on them. And as we've been telling people for the last 25, 30 years, what are they doing now? Since the world don't want to deal with the human traffickers and the baby sacrificers, because that's really their religion. People just don't know it. So people think that when they did the Roe versus Wade case, measured by the Dred Scott case, because that's what was used as a reference, Dred Scott case, devaluing humanity, that they loving women and everything. And so now you have a lot of sick people. They're slow-minded. They have perforated brains because they've been eating their own babies at burger joints and don't know it, sacrificing their babies, pretending they're helping women control their bodies. It's such hypocrisy. So they've been murdering their children and acting like they're not doing demon sacrifices, because that's what they are. And they ain't rituals either. And guess what? They're not eating Ritz crackers. They're actually eating powdered babies and drinking blood. And people say, no, they're not. They're just doing these because these are nice wine cookies and they're drinking nice wine and stuff. Well, they've been doing it for centuries and you've been helping them. And you can keep on pretending that it's just a beautiful spiritual ritual. These people are demons. And you have no idea how demonic they really are. You're going to find out some more stuff. And if anything, another reason we're having this conversation, because the truth of the matter is, we're going to need a lot of healing among the people. Because what we've been telling you for 25, 30 years is now hitting you in your face. You think you've seen it. You haven't seen it yet. And it's going to be so ugly, cruel, and devastating that a lot of people won't survive it mentally. Plus one of the things that they wanted to do, this is another reason why they wanted to expand, burger joints 2 for $5 and all that stuff, so they could get rid of the carcasses of the babies, that they didn't use the organs and stuff and the blood, is so that they could contaminate the people, so that when this stuff comes out, they can charge you with cannibalism of your own children. And then when you start saying that, oh, we didn't have anything to do with that, you did. Although many of you have been ignorant of it. But you need to know that much of the sicknesses that you have and the retardation that's among many of you is because you've been eating your own babies for quite some time, right out of the burger joints. Uncomfortable truth, but it absolutely is true. And for those who doubt it, do a little bit more research and you will find there is no burgers, no so-called hamburgers that are sold under the U.S. corporation jurisdiction that does not have human DNA in it. That's a fact. It absolutely does. And so for all of you who've been thinking that you're so super duper spiritual of God, of Jesus, and of Allah and everything, doing your burgers, you have a lot of women who've been donating their babies ignorantly, and some, unfortunately, willingly, to these human traffickers who have been pretending to be government since 1871, who have actually been genociding the people and getting rid of the carcasses, feeding them back to the people, and then charging you income tax that doesn't apply to you to support the institutions and the agencies to maintain these operations. And what we just talked about is lightweight. We really don't get into the real depth of what they've been doing to your children. We're just letting you know that you've been eating them. And it's true. And that this is collateral damage. So there's a lot of spiritual ugly going on, a lot of spiritual damage going on, and much of this stuff is going to come out more and more and more. And as it does, a lot of people, when they realize how corrupt they have become, they will be angry at the hybrids for doing this to them, but they also must start taking responsibility and stop consenting to this demonic operation, etc., known as the United States Corporation Company, that has been fraudulently presented as a country since 1871. And you got to stop pretending that you don't know this. You got to stop pretending that you don't comprehend what we're talking about. However, while you may charge us and be angry at us for telling you the truth and giving you a mirror, understand that these people who you've been defending are willing to genocide you and your family out of physical existence while you keep defending them and going against us for telling you the truth. And for those who've been sitting on the sideline judging those who've been trying to enforce the Constitution, which would include all treaties, etc., and pretend you don't know what this is all about, you shall be charged in history for your misprision. And with that, for the subject at the moment, I yield the floor.
You want to answer questions? Or
yes.
You got like an hour and 45 minutes left. Let me see. Of course, a lot of people are asking where they can get your book, of course.
They'll get that through here. We'll have all the stuff available to you later in their original text. Most of the books that we've been putting out over the years are highly abbreviated because we had so much opposition from people among us who should have been doing this for the people decades ago. And for both economic dispensation and expediency, much of it was heavily edited and put out. But you will be getting the Adeptus forms later this year.
Here's a question from Bobby. Can Taj talk about the letter from Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano to Donald Trump? Do you know that letter?
Oh, I haven't analyzed that. I don't have that before me, but they could share it if they would like to. If they could screenshot it and we can read it off.
Okay.
But I've heard of it, but I don't have it before me.
Yeah. Okay. So they put this question in there like 10 times. So you don't have to put it in there anymore. If you have it.
Do what?
No, I'm just saying if they haven't, you haven't seen it. So let me see.
Yeah, I haven't read it in detail. And keep in mind when you're reading this letter, and people need to know this, Donald Trump has not taken a penny for that position of the office of the president for the United States because it's de facto. And Donald Trump, as I told you a couple of years ago, I've been saying for the last couple of years, with a lot of people criticizing me and debunking what I'm saying, and I'm going to say it again. Donald Trump is assigned, and his missionary work goes far beyond that office, which is already dead. That must be understood. Keep what I just said, and you can hold me to it.
You didn't say was, you said is.
Is.
Present.
I ain't no was, he is.
Someone is asking about whether or not the flash drive, USB drive is still available. Yes, it is. And if you look across the screen, you'll see the information scrolling across the screen for anyone who wants to get the USB drive, the flash drive, called the Moorish Science Study USB. But just text USB to that number and we'll get back to you. Let me see if there are any more comments, questions.
And I will
here's a question.
Give note too. I will review that letter from the Cardinal to Donald Trump. And keep in mind, as we've been telling people for the last few years, that there would be a feedback loop because the nations of the earth, the Asiatic nations, would stop trading with the U.S. corporation and buying their treasury bonds, which is really what all of this confusion is really a diversion from the fact that the stock market crashed. They're covering it up. Donald Trump administration absorbed the Inquisition Revenue Services operation of the Circle Church and the Chancery, known as the IRS, into the Treasury, which was closed since 1921 and has been using their own system to pump up so that some of you right now are still getting Social Security and some of the other pensions, all of which had already been squandered And if it hadn't been for Donald Trump, a lot of you would be on the curb already. And again, that's not a defense of Donald Trump. I'm just telling you what he's done and what his job is. If it wasn't for Donald Trump, many of you would be dead right now. That's the truth. But because they're controlling our estate is why I speak of him. Not because I'm supporting him or any other of the hybrids who've been operating at the North unlawfully for generations to the destruction of the people of the planet as well as the people of the land. However, like I said years ago, Donald Trump is better than the whole body of the rest of them wrapped up in golden ribbon. That's the fact.
We won't talk too much about him, so they won't.
No, I'm just saying what it is.
I know.
But go ahead. And that's not a defense of him. I'm just telling you what it is. You ain't seen nothing yet. You just wait what you're all going to get hit with in the next week or two. And then in this coming part of the year, if anything that you need with each other and your family members is patience, tolerance, love, and forgiveness, because you're going to need it. And you're going to need it more than what it sounds like I'm telling you. It may get better later on, but before it gets better, you're going to go through a horrible storm. Horrible storm. And you're going to recognize the psychic attacks that you've been under by these people that you thought were religious people. And you're going to find out who the real devils have been. For real, for real, for real. Are we here to try to kind of like, like we've always said, Dr. Naila, we can't stop the bloodshed. What we're trying to do is limit it. We can't stop the suffering. What we're trying to do is limit it. But we must be fair with ourselves and be fair with people and encourage them to dig within themselves that which is divine, which is where it is, and be honorable and sincere with the love and the cares that they claim to have for all that is divine and for humanity at large, and be very sincere because you're going to need it. However, we're not going to tell you anymore because how do you put it this way? We don't have to tell you we tell you get a political umbrella, study civics. Study real history. Declare your nationality. Nationalize. Oh, yeah. Well, guess what? You're going to find how very serious all of this is. Not some time off. You're living it. It's going to become more and more clear to you why a lot of things we've been saying to you for the last 40 years. Hopefully, we can all come together, love one another, and try to do that which is good, and particularly forgive each other, forgive yourselves, be firm against that which is wrong, be firm against that which is evil, stop supporting that which is evil, stop consenting to that which you know is a fraud, and that's the least you can do for the children. The least, because you damn sure ain't done much else. Because this stuff has to be paid for. Some can be fixed. Some must be removed from the planet. And that's like for real. And you're going to need strong men and women to handle what you're getting ready to face. You ain't faced nothing yet. This is getting ready to get beyond ugly. Beyond ugly. Don't feel sorry for yourselves, though, because you earned it with your hypocrisy and denying the honor of your ancient mothers and fathers and following after their idol gods of Rome that you knew nothing of. So we're not totally innocent either. Next, Dr. Naila.
Okay. Person still with that. What can we do as a whole, T. Craig Forces, what can we do as a whole or to take action and see it change faster than 50 to 100 years.
The faster you stop supporting Rome and the institutions, and the faster you stop calling these fakers your government, and the faster you stop claiming your labor as income, because this is key. These are keys. I'm only giving you some keys, but this is an example of what's been done on multiple levels, on both the physical and the metaphysical level, and you haven't taken responsibility. Take responsibility to the truth. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Stop the BS and stop pretending you don't understand this stuff. Because society around you is collapsing. The real deal of it is people can keep on acting like they don't comprehend this. Well, guess what? The house is falling down around them. You're not going to send this to another generation. You're not getting this off. This time you ain't getting this off. This is really what you really must understand. This time you're not getting this off. You got this off many other cycles. You ain't getting this off this cycle. Take responsibility. And stop consenting to this BS.
Okay, questions. Okay.
And stop supporting institutions and persons of these institutions who have not been telling you the truth, but they're still draining your communities. You can stop that for starters.
Question: what if we want to buy more land? Should we just wait?
You're not buying anything. Well, let's put it this way. Let's get real. There is no buying or selling of land. Land cannot be sold. Let's get that very clear. Everything operating at Midgard is a stewardship situation. Therefore, you're dealing with inheritances that cannot be transferred. Any instrumentality issued by Rome or any subcategory or member of the Roman Curia in the order of deeds and mortgages is de facto, is a fraud, and is not a sale at whatsoever. It is a tax instrument of sharecropping. So anything that you transfer between yourself and them is a fraud, and you're buying nothing. If anything, claim your estate because you're the heirs. Now, who's the heirs? Now you got another issue that has been covered up, don't you? So we have issues that these things have been addressed, but people have not taken them serious. However, that's the call, true heir. So now who's the American? Because the daggone shore into hybrids. And the daggone shore is not the baby eaters. Yeah, they like it rare too. You find out how ugly this thing really is. A lot of you are, put it this way, the fact that some of the stuff that's really been going down is not known by some of you have saved a lot of you mentally. Because many of you, if you knew how ugly this stuff is, you'd crack, which is also part of their intention. So you're giving some of this information to prepare you for what you're going to be smacked with. And it's not comfortable. And what we talked about is really minor. It gets that ugly. However, we understand the rule and the nature law of cause and effect. Even though the demon dragons are strong, they're only strong because you keep feeding them. You know, dragons talk big shit. Oh, I'm going to eat your sandwiches and take all your sneaks and everything. And everybody goes, oh, please, take it, not my stuffeth. You start feeding them that while you start going, I'm going to take your stuff. You know, big wings and everything, that flame start going out. He's trying to put out your flame, your Christ. You start feeding him. He has only energy because you keep feeding him.
We talked about dark crystal.
Oh, because
dark crystal is such.
It is telling you that they've always told you. Yeah. This is one thing that hybrid Europeans have always done because they know divine law. Whether they use stories to tell you fiction books, and movies. They tell you to reduce their karmic response. The key is to what? To get the people to keep consenting to them, consenting to their authority. They are great deceivers. Their missionary work is to deceive you. They have no authority. They have no jurisdiction. We keep giving it to them to the point that we're convinced that they have the power. We keep giving it to them. This issue of the income tax is just a perfect example of why they're still in power, because you keep funding them against the law. You keep funding them.
It says right in their paperwork that it's voluntary.
Course it is, which means consent. And they know it's a fraud. It's like this. Look. What section of the Constitution that all persons that claim any office, clerk, secretary, Congress, representative, council person, mayor, governor, president, any position of office, or any contractor dealing with them in relationship to the people must take an oath of office and also sign oaths of ethics, which we will deal with in the future. Document it. So when these people keep pretending they don't understand constitutional obligation and treaty obligation, they're lying. And when you and the so-called leader guys and girls around you keeps talking about, well, he didn't really understand this, they're lying too. And because you keep defending a fraud, they've entrenched themselves and they're damaging you and your families to the point that many of you are a paycheck off the curb. Let me tell you something. You ain't seen the horns of these demons yet. You think you have. Stop supporting them. And we know the rule of cause and effect. If we could just get you to stop allowing them to misclassify you, just declare the honor of your mothers and fathers. Do that much. It will kill the bond system that they sell around the world, which is really what's been happening anyway. But you want to start us moving ahead. Stop feeding the beast. Because his number is 666 and it's the number of a man. They're members of the Roman Curia. They're members of the Circle Church and Chancery. They're called Sadducees and Pharisees, i.e. they're attorneys, attorners, and lawyers. With their helpers or minions known as bishopric, also known as clergymen, standing behind a pulpit, claiming to love Jesus, God, and Allah, and they love themselves. They're just contaminating everything that represents anything divine. They use it because you keep falling for it. They just give you in different flavors. What kind of popsicle y'all want this week? The purple lollipop or the green one? They call it sex. S-E-C-T-S. And also they call it denominations. Oh, boy. You know, it's amazing when you really study us and see how willingly naive we have been to the injury of ourselves, our families, and our children. And then we have the nerve to march all over the place, praying all the daggone time, and starting new alphabet soup organizations to deal with rights and never read a constitution or a treaty. And allow these human traffickers to call your labor and your pecuniary wages income, and you sign papers saying that you have income and you don't, never did. Are you a foreign corporation that made a capital investment in a foreign port and then generated capital assessments, assets, and then you do the percentage of the profit made from that, which is what income is, and income is nothing else? And if you haven't done that, you don't have damn income. And if you sign papers and say you have income, you just committed a fraud, and they have a right to your estate. And that's what they've been doing to you. And you keep feeding them. Then you teach it to your family members. Because you don't want the truth. When somebody tells the truth, they try to tell you it's an opinion. I gave you their own documents. So stop pretending you don't know. You want to help your families? Stop that energy stream right there alone. Their bullshit will collapse overnight. They live on your virtues because you keep on letting them. And you keep on violent. You complain about them misrepresenting you, then you sign and misrepresent yourself knowingly. Now you know, so don't pretend you don't know. How about doing that? Institute that. Help your family with that. That'll help us move ahead quickly. Because remember, we're in the doo-doo because we keep swimming across the turd pool. Jumping in the cesspool calling, oh, how you like my back room, my backyard pool here? It's a cesspool. Well, we need our own perfume factory. Well, if you stop jumping in the cesspool, you won't need perfume. How about that? It's like you see a bunch of people standing, banging their head on the edge of a brick building talking about, whoo, you know, our people need their own aspirin factory. A little child come along and say, well, if you stop banging your head, you won't even need aspirins. How about that? Marching and praying all over the place, making ourselves fools on our own land. Going to buy your own estate from a foreigner who's occupying you. Under a color of law, color of authority, with a de facto, defunct, and dissolved corporate entity that they lied to you since 1871, told you was a country, and you bought into it. And that's what you're suffering from right now. The ignorance is amazing. While we sit around and talk about gods and devils every 5 minutes and don't even know basic stuff of operations on the planet. It's extremely disgusting, really.
Well, it's frustrating because so many things.
Because even a child could understand. You could present this information to a grade schooler and they can rationalize this. And adults have difficulty putting 2 and 2 together. You know, I think metaphysically 2 and 2 is 3.5 because the religion that I belong to, and they start that kind of jizzy stuff. And then they put it on their children. And then get negative results and then blame the devil. And he never did nothing to him. The devil walking around on 2 feet.
There's a question about Chief Federal Postal Judge Mark Christopher. Are you familiar with him? The question is whether or not Chief Federal Postal Judge Mark Christopher can be trusted or not. You know, he's the one that comes on from.
Learn to trust yourself. If you understand these principles, know why he speaks the way he speaks. Because basically, a lot of people, particularly a lot of Europeans and others, hybrid Europeans, people that are not even direct heirs of this land, are speaking how you should have been speaking generations ago. And all your marching, praying leader guys know and should have been talking. The things that they're saying is what we've been telling you for 40 years, even teaching you to write writs in that type of order. You have to do it. You're the heir. Can't be, you put it this way, if you act like a ward, you will be held as ward.
Yeah, he's a Moor. Yeah,
I know, but I'm still saying what is said publicly. Everything should be said publicly.
He does.
Yeah, but I'm just saying everything should be said. What he's saying, you should be saying. All of us should be saying. And all of the so-called leaders that keep talking about nationhood and self-determination. Because they know these things, they haven't been teaching it. What they've been doing is lining their pockets and going to the Bahamas with Jesus as half every year with birth or butt. That's the truth. We need to take responsibility for our irresponsibility. You know what I mean, Dr. Naila? And stop playing victim.
Mo West says, how are we supposed to know all this?
You easily go in yourself because it was in you. Your mom put it in you. We've denied ourselves for so many generations that we think that we can't think. That's what our problem is. Trust you. This is why, a couple months ago we did, self-government. understanding jurisdiction. We keep believing, we've been trained to keep looking for and believing outside of ourselves. Everything is within. And if they want to accuse or try to use the books anthropomorphically or otherwise, if they want to talk about the anthropomorphic Jesus, then he said, all of you are gods. Didn't he tell you that? Didn't Prophet Muhammad come to complete the cycles or the works of Jesus? Even though this is anthropomorphic? Isn't he his cousin? Distant cousin? Yes?
Yes.
Well, there you go. Get to work, y'all. You know, our concepts, much of what we do and say has been twisted because we've gone along with what things that can be easily proven to be false or misrepresented. And to get along with people or to be liked by people in organized groups and etc., we've accepted things that we knew are misrepresentations that can be proven to be misrepresentations, where we must admit that while over the generations we have taught the forces and powers of nature and cosmology in anthropomorphic form, whether via Jesus, Yeshua, or Muhammad, etc., these are anthropomorphic figures of powers and forces, not so much actual physical men. However, the collateral damage of these things, the anthropomorphic presentments not really honestly being explained to the people, has again caused much of this mental collateral damage that exists now when people are looking at these platforms that have been presented as religion. And therefore, the concepts have been corrupted. That is also collateral damage because the anthropomorphic truths have not been told. We have not rejected them. It's just that they're for children. Grow up and put your childish things aside and stop allowing the human traffickers to take all of the ancient symbolisms and pervert them as symbols of the devils, when in fact, those are scientific and cosmological and geometric symbols of both your body forms, your evolutionary development on both the spiritual and the physical level, etc., and also symbols of character building, etc., and the forces of nature, and are not demonic whatsoever. However, what you have is human traffickers and people with demonic spirits themselves that have taken that which exists in ancient Asia, ancient Africa, and contaminated them and hide behind them for their own good. That's why you must study so that you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Keep that in mind, because we've been doing that too.
Yeah.
Oh, was there something else too?
Well, let me see if there are any more. Keep those questions coming out, y'all. Let me see. Let me make sure I can get missing a point. Trying to. In the meantime, could you tell them? We'll share with them this book that I shared with you today.
Oh yeah.
This is the first one. This is not the one I gave you.
Yeah.
But this is the old one.
Now, this is a book Dr. Naila shared with me, and this book is by Vernon Howard. Yeah, and it's called 1500 Ways to Escape the Human Jungle. Awesome. And I just want to read a couple of the statements from the book. And it's clear that Vernon has been studying ancient African philosophy, Sufi philosophy. That means those with the hair, with the men who wear the wool, or the woolly-headed ones, because that's your Gnostic wisdom or your Hermetic law, or what they call Gnosticism, which is the root of all the philosophies of religion on Midgard, in fact. Now, But I'll read a couple of them.
I got one from one.
Yeah.
Let me jump to.
Yes.
This is 1222.
All right, go ahead.
It says most people react wrongly to rescue, but if you take away my suffering, who will I be?
Yeah.
In other words,
yes,
you know how
they identify with
the suffering.
Now, this is back to what we talked about when most people don't know themselves because they spent most of their lives molding themselves around Job, around the job. Mm-hmm. They're educated. They don't know that their life is molded around work in service to other men who have not their interest in mind or in heart, which is why a lot of people are confused right now because they're trying to get back to a job system that was never normal in the first instance.
True. We thought it was.
But we look at that as normal.
Right.
And it's been disrupted. But it does show you, what it does expose is the effect of the psychic attacks that have been put on humanity for generations, because this is where a lot of the healing must take place too. Right. For people to really begin to know themselves, mm-hmm. and to even get to the point of enjoying the fruits of their own labor a little bit. Mm-hmm. Now, here's another one. And share a few, because I know you had a few good ones that you were going to show. But I want to read the strange facts about the human jungle. Human society is simply men and women pretending that the game of pretense is not going on. 2, humanity appreciates truth about as much as a squirrel appreciates silver. 3, if you think that his or her happy face is a mask covering unhappiness, you are right. What most men call their conscience is imaginary virtue switching left or right according to self-interest. Anyway, it's a very good, good book.
Here's one. 878 in this.
Go ahead.
It says a conditioned mind can teach right living about as much as a small child can teach astronomy. and most of us do. We have been programmed. They say he's a condition. And
if you pay attention, that's what they've done in all the dogmatic religious platforms. They have not really been teaching breathing techniques, which is spirituality, nor the Gnostic philosophies, which is the religion. And they've actually misrepresented their own programming of their dogma sects as religion and has corrupted the world. There you go, collateral damage, which is why many people can't handle this situation that they're faced with now today. Give us another one.
885 says the real solution to social problems cannot be explained to anyone who does not want to hear himself explained. Mm-hmm. We don't want. We never see ourselves in the picture. It's always what somebody's doing to us, or
so it comes under the category of sheep and wolf.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that comes under give no false rewards. Yeah. Isn't that casting pearls to the swine thing?
True.
Because you can see they're all actually Gnostic philosophies. And so this writer has been clearly studying Hermetic law.
569 is what is called worship or meditation is often nothing but an evasion of personal responsibility for self-awakening.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So,
and it's true.
And I know, look, we already know this book's gonna sell out.
Yeah.
Book. Every time we tell you about the book,
and for also comfort reading.
But this, when I find something that
this is very
this has got 1,500. That's the first one I got, the old book. That's why. But I gave you a new one. Let me see if there are any more questions, comments.
Yeah, because give you an honest look at yourself. From the nature of how we have been trained to respond to each other. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the insights, gives us a mirror to ourselves and shows how we've been actually molded into this artificiality. you know, that we've been calling the good life, because we got a job and ain't got paid, even, you know, thinking that we've been paid. All of these paradigms, you know, false paradigms are collapsing. So humanity must be prepared for a new evolutionary era.
I think each of us individually
has to
prepare, because we come in alone
mm-hmm.
and we leave out alone.
Yes.
But it's between, you know, the time between the dash that
mm-hmm.
we interact with everyone else, but each one has to heal him
yes.
or her own self.
Yes, and you have to be aware of it.
Yeah, you can't.
And take responsibility.
Absolutely.
And the psychology, and this is, again, in order for the priesthood to feed on the people, this is why they have created the sacrificial lamb paradigm, which is really not the teachings of Jesus, mm-hmm. the sacrificial lamb type mentality. So they could feed on the people as the people look for this outside savior when the savior is within self. It, as well as mean that they must bear their own cross.
Absolutely.
But they must understand what the cross is. It's not necessarily negative, if you get the point. It's really earth navigation, because that's what it is. It's called the mundane cross.
Okay, that was just a little station break, because when I find something that I feel
mm-hmm.
would be beneficial,
that'd be helpful. Yeah,
I want to share that with you. Tarik Bey, what's the difference between erudite and adept?
Erudite is basically what an adept would be. So like education is to draw out, to pull out, right? Erudition is where you more or less become masterful, and an adept is one who masters, or what you would call master degree, or someone who's a PhD. Essentially, in your different social structures at Midgard, in different organizations, matters not. If someone is a PhD or doctorate of philosophy, that would be an adept. Yeah. So like if you have someone who's like, say, a pastor, a bishop, an imam, a rabbi, a master carpenter, a mason, Eastern Star, Knights Templar, Knights of Columbus, they have different agendas, but all of those would be PhDs. They would be adept. When they have a title, when anyone has a title, they are essentially adept or erudite in the philosophy or the discipline so addressed.
Mine's a THD.
So addressed.
Right. So that's what. Let me see.
And keep in mind, when you have, and this is also why why people must study, and because that's good, because it leads to other issues. See, once people understand these fundamental rules, right? They know when you see people running around with titles, they're this and they're that, and they got 50 titles, and they have not produced literature or a product, they have no business with that title. I mean, if somebody tell you they're a doctor of this, or their imam, or their rabbi, or their grand sheik, or their sheikas, or their an adept, and they have not produced literature to be critiqued amongst humanity, they're wrongly holding the title. That's another reason why they've been getting away with misleading people, because they make statements and take positions that they won't put their signature to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're called armchair rulers.
Someone says, explain Bey Maurice Toshira. Explain those Mongolian. I think they mean Mongolian mixed breeds. Mongolians and mixed. I don't know, Mongolian mixed breeds.
Let's keep it very simple. It is best described of the human family, truthfully, and because we're talking about linguistic group, but we're also talking about how man has populated the earth. In general, to be safe, with some refined examination, the different nations of the earth can be referred to as Berber gypsies. That's a fact. On another level, when you're talking about the Mongolians, who you refer to the Mongolians, you can refer to as the Dravidian or the Naga tribes of Central Africa, who crossed the Red Sea, went to the northern part of Asia. And if you would want to examine them, look at the ancient traditional dress and costumes of all of the people of Africa, compare them to all of the people of North Asia, of Phoenicia, Iberian Peninsula that you know as Europe, and you will see absolute cosmological structure and geometric structure, congruency, continuity, similarity, and symbolism, i.e., you're looking at Asia, Africa on the planet, period. So you're just looking at the extended family of Africa. That's what you're looking at. But if you want to be more specific, you just look at it. Look at the Naga of Central Sudan and Nubia. So you're still dealing with ancient Canaanite Moabites. That's all you're dealing with. All of us, and it ain't got a daggone thing to do with religion. It's called pedigree and bloodline.
Nor does it have necessarily to do with the complexion per se.
Huh?
Skin color.
It never did. It never. That whole paradigm is Carlos Linnaeus, the 1700s. People keep taking social engineering control systems that were set up by German naturalists like Friedrich Johann Blumenbach, Carlos Linnaeus, and others. And what's the other naturalist? I forget the other naturalists that they always use dealing with the so-called monkey theory. And you can look at that as being adopted into the social operations of the U.S. corporation with their operations at North America, particularly in the Census Bureau, etc. This stuff has nothing to do with the true history of the genealogy of the human family. It is more psychological warfare for creating schismata and divisionisms for the priesthood who chose to make themselves gods over the people, hiding behind Brahma, hiding behind Allah, hiding behind Amalek, hiding behind Yahweh, hiding behind Jesus, etc., which all of these are anthropomorphic expressions of actually the development of the glandular systems, the cosmological impersonation called anthropomorphism, given to structured metaphors, teachings, and mythologies to pass information and preserve information for generations. But in fact, most of these beings in the actual physical form, as taught anthropomorphically, didn't exist the way that people think they do. However, they do exist in the personalities of men and women. Now, that's the truth. Know the difference. Next.
Okay. Let's see. JL Puckett 40 says, how do I start collecting taxes for my newfound stolen land?
Make more people conscious, because the real deal, all that paradigm is dying. That's part of what's going on now. That's part of what I didn't want to really get into this because I don't want to put things out there.
So people say you said to do this.
No, so because a lot of things will be countered, because some things we're talking about, there's some things we're talking about are actually projections, meaning that if you go up and look at things, right, you're looking at placement of things, and some things are things to come. Some things, if you say, then the dark priesthood will injure certain people to try to stop things. So some things you don't say, but let's say this way. The tax systems, as you've known it, will not be part of the future for humanity. I'll say that much.
Right. And you know, it's very evident how many people are waking up and shaking up the system, the paradigm that we've been.
The system is
because they're working so hard to shut everybody up, to shut everybody down.
Exactly.
Because
the truth. Remember, when they deplatform people, when they censor people, demonetize people, close people's accounts and stuff like that, is because you're putting a nail in the coffin of the vampire. Remember, if you're making a fool of yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't like you, why don't they just let you make a fool of yourself? Why go through the trouble to try to stop it or to block it, right?
Yeah. I don't know what this person is. I'm going to put.
Well, then go to something else.
Listen, no, I'm not. Stanford Jordan looks like an Albion. But anyway, the question is, what are you talking about? Can't make sense of what you're saying. Are we supposed to read between the lines of your conversation?
Some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, some things. Yeah. Some things are for people who have insight. Some things are said in such ways because we know that you have enemies out there that are actually trying to hold the people back. Yeah. And so you give them, you know how you say you don't telegraph blows?
Right.
But those who have eyes to see, those who have ears to hear, hear.
Right.
And it's for everyone, but it ain't for everyone.
There's another one. LOL, talking in circles, offering no solutions.
Well, good. Fine. You're the solution.
That's right.
Because you're not. You're the solution.
You have to be. Yeah. Unless you are.
One solution is telling you what? Stop paying income tax. Stop misclassifying yourself as generating income when you're not. That's solution. Use it. And stop pretending you don't understand. And stop trying to block information under the guise of trying to be intelligent or helpful.
Yeah, just trying to interject. If you don't understand, doesn't mean it. Well, whatever. Well, Naisha Tarik Bey. I'm not even, too much energy going to that ridiculous stuff.
You don't feed it.
Yeah.
You gotta see this. Is what you do. Knowing when you're helping humanity, right. Know that the opposition is just as strong.
Absolutely.
Know that they've been funded to do so. Know that when you come trying to help humanity, that they have persons that sometimes they call trolls or COINTELPRO. They're already compensated. They can comfortably do this. This is what their job is.
Right.
However, for people who are prepared or want to know the truth, they can see it. They can see it easily. Sometimes you just have to point, just give people notice of things. And what you don't want to do is get the people into that dependency mentality, which is damaging.
Right.
So you don't tell them that 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 2 is 4, 4 and 4 is 8. You teach them the principle and let them start exercising, because every man, every woman, and even every child must confess their own. It's in the nature of you to know. So stop pretending that you don't, and stop, and that's that mentality where they keep looking for a sacrificial lamb. Why aren't you being a sacrificial lamb for us? Why are you making us be responsible just like you are, that we're all supposed to go to the bathroom and use our own toilet paper? We need a Negro toilet paper wiper. No, you don't. You need to wipe your own butt and act like you know.
Excuse me. I'm not sure what they want you to go more into. Mark Kishan Christopher is, this is Naisha Tarik Bey. Mark Kishan Christopher is proposing cryptocurrency will be the new form of currency. What are your thoughts?
It will be a transfer, but I'll tell you this. While the transfer is being made, it's also another way of stealing the people's resources, because in the dimensional world, even though you're going to be thinking on a fifth dimensional level, that means you'll be more awake. However, the gold in accord with the sun, the silver in accord with the moon, copper in accord with Venus, cosmology, nature of civilization on the earth, and the contractual rule of substance for substance, until humanity on a galactic scale changes the order, that is the money. Absent anything to abstract, if you can't hold it in your hand, If you can't hold it in your hand, you don't have it. Just consider that. Doesn't mean don't do it. But I also know that that is what will be taking place, even things along the way of blockchain, as they might call it. This is why transfers are made. But keep in mind, persons who have been losing power are still trying to keep power. Keep in mind, anything that you would call money or monetary, because basically money is moon economics. That's the energy of the moon being closer to the earth, with the satellite of the moon being close to the earth, controlling the womb, controlling the flow of water, etc. And the ecology is what money is. Now, the alchemical energy of the moon is silver. So when you're looking at things that if you want to start securing yourself, you simply got to look at nature. And so that would be today, even though they're talking about gold, silver would be your major breakout. Silver, this would be, now that's not digital. It's not digital. It's not digital. It's not digital. If this is gold. Now, here's bit. Now, I'll show you oxymoron. Just the same oxymoron when they say dollar bill. Bill implies debt. Dollar implies physical Yakimthaler, which means a gold coin. So a coin is a metallic precious. It could be also non-precious metal, but is essentially a metal coin instrument, physical, that is pressed, that has representation by virtue of grams or weights and measure, with a predetermined value system agreed upon in organized honor, agreed social structure. That would be a coin. Anything that's abstract, like digit, that can be punched on a computer and disappear the same way, cannot be a coin. Therefore, Bitcoin is an oxymoron, and a thinker would recognize that. It does not mean that that system is not going to be used as things go through transition. However, don't be fooled. If you notice that every system of Bitcoin that they have initiated since Bitcoin, even the people who have initiated, have you ever met them? That's number one. Number two, the fungibility and the utility would be dependent on the persons who created it. Have you seen utility and fungibility of Bitcoin? Doesn't mean that some people are not going to accept it. As an example, let's put an example. If I transfer this to you right now, can you go in the world and just have fungibility and utility?
Yes.
Why? According to contract law, it is substance for substance. Right. If I give you, I say, I'm going to give you a coin. Oh, what kind of coin you give me? A Bitcoin. Can you hand it to me? It can disappear in a second, can it? So if your computer goes down, or they have a server, whatever,
you lose your wallet, passwords,
everything goes. Did you notice how often have, for these last couple of years, have they had Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a whole bunch? And Ethereum is broke off from the original Bitcoin. These partners who broke off, and then they split up again, then they split up again. People have invested thousands and thousands, and they said, look, this is worth 50 grand now. Go buy a 50 grand car and see if it works. Does it have fungibility? Does it have utility? It does. Now, it doesn't mean that persons who in a small group who agree to trade will accept it.
Well, it has gotten to the place now where you're able to transfer your wealth onto like credit cards. And
now let's look at this. It has more gotten to the place.
Right. It wasn't always
no. Go to a restaurant. You've been coming since last year with your family to feed them. And now you can say, it's getting to the place that we're going to get some grits and eggs this time. Wait, you've been coming to the restaurant for 2 years. It's getting to the place that they're going to give you a meal. At what point do you understand that
maybe I should say it has gotten to the place now where it's now transferable onto
when a trade instrument has what is known, write these things down because you're going to have to study because you're going to answer your own questions. Fungibility, and utility. If an instrument does not have fungibility and utility, you're getting played. Get over it. However, it doesn't mean that it ain't going to be used. Are we clear? Because that's what got people in trouble already. They don't understand that Bitcoin principle or digital trade has been going on since the 40s. They just turn the public on to rob them of the last of their substance so they can keep control. That's not opinion. That's just a rational mathematical analysis of the instrumentality. That it lacks fungibility and it lacks utility. If it has utility, it doesn't become to be anything. It is tradable immediately. And it does not, you don't go to sleep and it loses value overnight. The same way you don't go to sleep and it triples in value overnight. And then drops all to zero next week. Which means it's unstable, doesn't it? Doesn't it?
Let's see this question.
So like this, if I have a coin, and this is called bit, that means how is the registry of every bit that implies the value when this coin doesn't change, it just fluctuates.
You mean it remains in its
It
intact.
remains stable.
Yeah.
Which is why the people are in trouble now, because they violated the rule.
Right.
They let some con artist bankers tell them, at least before they gave you a physical fiat, even though they still did the same thing. They fluctuated. As a matter of fact, they have more access. I'll tell you this. It is easier, and it has been practiced among the Circle Church and Chancery members to rob people through credit cards, which is Bitcoin. Still, that's Bitcoin. And it's been operating for decades. They just give it a different name. They've been robbed in larger amounts digitally than they ever have been physically, in physical fiat. Meaning that you can wake up tomorrow and someone in East Russia use just information data on you on a credit card and bought a car and a house and took 59 flights. And next year you just find out that they've done that. But yet it is held against you. Whereas, did they reach in your pocket and take 59,000 notes? In other words, answer your own question. That's what I'm saying to you. I'm not denying that it's being used. I'm saying to you, people need to think at all times. Use your intelligence. Abstract disappears. Why? Because it never appeared in the first instance.
J. Kane said gold and silver are being suppressed. Not good.
That's why.
We still have it. That's why.
I'm just saying that's why. They need to understand why they're suppressing it, to maintain the fraud system that's in place, because it can't live with the substance. See, legitimate monetary system, what you call stable, fungible, utility, lawful monetary system, a legal monetary system can't live in the room with lawful monetary system. Why? Because it is fictitious. So how about selling bit air or bit food? Bitcoin or coin. This is the coin. Show me a Bitcoin. Show a Bitcoin. No, you can have one, but now
I can't afford it.
Now, how can a Bitcoin be just this today and this tomorrow and then not this the next day? Mean you're still investing on value. What they're doing, they're draining your resource on a large scale, on a constant. That's why it keeps what they call splitting. Splitting means they just stole half of it. Duh. I'm not condemning. I'm just saying to use common sense.
Yeah. How do you acquire the land?
You are the land. Read land in law book. Go to, as an example, ancient and modern jurisprudence, right? As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do, just take a minute and read land, right? Some of it, right? Give me a second. And this is back to us being trained to look at things one way when in fact they're actually not what we've been told they were or are, right? Land. Now, land, in the most general sense, comprehends any ground, any soil or earth whatsoever as fields, meadows, pastures, woods, moors, waters, marshes, furzes, and heath. In a more limited sense, land, quote unquote, denotes the quality and the character of the interest or the estate which the tenant may own in land. Land may include any estate or interest in lands, either legal or equitable, easements, incorporeal hereditaments, etc. Land is the one thing, and the estate in land is another thing. For an estate in land is a time in land or land for a time. So technically, land signifies everything which may be holden, and the term is defined as comprehending all things of a permanent and substantial nature, and even of an unsubstantial nature, provided they be permanent. So ordinarily, the term is used as descriptive of the subject of ownership and not the ownership. The subject of ownership and not the ownership, right? So land includes not only the soil or the earth, but also things of a permanent nature, affixed thereto, or found therein, whether by nature, as water, trees, grass, herbage, other natural and perennial products, growing crops or trees, minerals under the surface, or by the hand of man, as buildings, fixtures, fences, bridges, as well as works constructed for use of water, such as dikes, canals, etc. So the concepts that when you're looking at land, you're looking at hereditaments, corporal and incorporeal. These things are not taught.
Explain that, what hereditaments is.
Hereditaments is all inheritances. So when you have, like, as an example, when you're looking at books that we refer to as, you know, African culture books like the Bible, Quran, stuff like that, right? And it'll say, honor your mothers and fathers that your days may be longer upon the earth land. So that means all inheritance. That means the culture, the customs, the traditions, the physicalities, the furniture, the physical land, things that are on the land, the crops, the renewal of the crops. All of these things is not in the minds of people when they're usually referring to land. And because when they're trained to the misinformation, they're often thinking, oh, I'm going to go down to the city and I saw this sign for this land, this acre of land for sale, and then they get a deed and they think they just bought land when actually that's a sharecropping agreement. The land was not sold, it's not transferred. You will be listed as a tenant because they don't own the land, and the land cannot be sold. However, it can be inherited. So this is why the hybrid Europeans occupy our lands, and this is what you call colonial hybrid European hegemony operations that are falsely referred to by mind control systems as racism and prejudice colonial operations in that sense of the word, when it's actually estate theft, including the all capital letters in the 14th Amendment operations, which is also called estate theft. They're stealing the land and you are the land.
So, but okay, we get that, but there's some folks that really literally want to.
I know. I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah. So so
now you're talking about impropria persona, and even to make the stewardess claim, to make a stewardship claim that stands in law,
right?
You cannot transfer business. You cannot claim a land that is not of your nativity, which means that you, as an example, you say if your pedigree and nationality is Chinese, as an example, right? You can't go to Brazil and claim the land. If you're Brazilian, right? They're Canaanite Moabites, right? Can't go to China or Russia and just claim land, because now you have political jurisdictions for generations. That's what nationality is. It protects what you call territorial inherited land. This is why the constitutions, the structured constitutions of different political jurisdictions, where you have the classification of nationals, citizens, and aliens, these different classifications. As an example, a person or being who may domicile in a territory, and they may be descendant from another nation. They could, what you would call in stewardship, necessarily buy, or what they think is buying land, but they will never own land. You cannot. This must be understood. So now with the operations, particularly here in the Western Hemisphere, in the Maghreb, in America, the heirs of land are Americans. The political dynamics that have been taking place is that we've been under hybrid European hegemony operations under Unam, Sanctum, and Doctrine of Discovery, false claims by hybrid Europeans who've been buying and selling land that doesn't belong to them, which is also why all of their operations must be done in what you call feudal deeds, because they can't sell the land. And the people of the land can't sell the land. So when they're making these statements that the Moors / Indians sold land to the hybrid Europeans for a string of beads and stuff, that's BS. That's against the culture. It can't happen. It's BS. So again, these misrepresentations that we have been trained in is also indicative of the collateral damage that has been done to us, and appreciative of those who are trying to help, because clarifying these things will help the next generations to start protecting their estates. And this is why, years ago we did the reversion of estate issues to make the distinction between the true heirs of the land and also the corporate fiction persons claiming the estates and the lands that are not theirs under Unam, Sanctum, and Doctrine of Discovery operations, again, which is, again, the collateral damage that we're suffering today. Now, what we would be looking at in our operations, basically, in satisfying the question beforehand, would be what is called allodial claims being made. And this is where the people collectively nationalize and simply nationalize the land, claim the land. You can't buy it. You claim it. It's yours. It's all, you inherited it.
Do you have to be tied to that specific land, that particular patch of land?
Now here we go to, now you understand what nationhoods are. Now you also understand around the world what's also been happening as an example for people to comprehend the references of hereditamates. As an example, when the hybrid Europeans invaded Isabella. Now, Isabella is known to most of you as Cuba. The hybrid Europeans were doing what they usually do when they go around the world, traffic children and stuff. And they were trafficking the little girls and stuff like that. They had little whorehouses for the preachers and the congressmen and the senators. And they had from operating from the United States Corporation Company. And they had like casinos and brothels and a whole bunch of other stuff. And the women came out to protect their children, was fighting them literally with sticks and stones to protect their children from U.S. corporation operatives. They were murdering women and children in the street, etc. And the information was getting out that you see getting out right now with them stealing children, taking them to islands and stuff like that, and doing all kinds of stuff to them. And Fidel Castro was actually trained in Texas as a double agent. And one of the Roman Curia member despot plants name was Batista. And he was running Cuba for the hybrid Europeans, you know, to traffic the little girls and stuff like that. And to block the information from getting out. So let's not look at this Epstein thing as new. This ain't new. They murdered a lot of the women, killed some of the children, and Fidel Castro says, you ain't got to go home, but your asses are leaving here. That's called nationalization. So, and not unlike Adolf Hitler did in Germany when some people were raping Germany economically, and he nationalized Germany and said, all who are not German, go home. Castro said, all who are not Cuban, go home. The brother, I forget his name, I forgot the premier's name, from Argentina, recently had done the same thing. This is again why the hybrid Europeans were did that Falkland War, as you all do some research. Do some research on the Falkland Island War, where they were coming there to claim their continued occupation. And the president of Argentina nationalized. Also, Vicente Fox, you do some research with the United Nations when they presented Bill Clinton as the American president. Notice that the phrase, the American president, and Vicente Fox objected. He says, he's the president of the United States. He's not the president of America. America's a continent, and you have many presidents of the different jurisdictions of America. And this is another corruption that must be clarified with our people here. And of course, people who have been living off the virtue of our people don't want these things presented to the people. And this is another reason why we're talking about collateral damage. So it's important for us who are the real people of the land, the real Americans, to declare our nationality and declare our estates. Because keep in mind, the operatives of the de facto United States Corporation, one of the major capacities or abilities of them to continue to sell other nations the treasury bonds that they set up in 1861, 1862, which you'll check out in the congressional records, etc., and in the House journals, was because our people agreed to be Indians, Negroes, black and colored, people of color type things, which took us out of the treaty obligations that already exist prior to the adoption from the Honesty Confederation, the fatwa principles of the Constitution for the United States. And this is another reason why it's important for the people to nationalize and claim their estate, etc. So the nationalization is used around the world on the planet, which is the point being made, for the proper heirs of all political jurisdictions to have their inheritances and their resources preserved from generation to generation. So it's not just the principle of buying and selling. No, that does not suffice in law, for a claim of reversion of estate supersedes any deed or mortgage claim, etc. This is again why persons who've been pretending to be government and persons who've been pretending nation this, nation that, nation that, nation this, do not teach that prior to 1913, all land was held in aboriginal title or allodial title, because they don't want you to know that. So when they talk about the Jekyll Island thing, they'll always talk about, well, it ain't no money and all this stuff. And they don't tell you that they abridged the issue of consular venues of diversity, of nationality, distinguishing nationals of the land from corporate citizens and or aliens under the Naturalization Act, which is also why after Ulysses Grant came into power, after Lincoln, etc., they changed up the Naturalization Act and start calling the hybrid Europeans white people, with the Whiggamore party split, and then they start claiming to be Americans when indeed they in fact are not. And they've been robbing our land under the name of American and the name of Unam Sanctum and the doctrine of discovery, creating all this collateral damage that we're suffering from now. Therefore, declare your nationality, declare your land. The more the people become conscious and it becomes normal for them just being themselves, the corruption will just fall away, because it only lives because the people aren't aware of their lost estate.
What? Okay, Funk Boogie says, asks, what about if a person has a felony, then they nationalize?
That does not remove the fact that you have your birthright is not lost because there was some felony.
Yeah, okay, because they said, do they have the same rights as other boys who've never been arrested?
Not just that. Who charged you with a felony, and what was the felony? And was the person who charged you a felony, were you before a jury of nationals of your own peers? Did you have due process?
Probably not.
And was the persons who charged you have any sovereign right by law to exercise under quo warranto an exercise of a court to make that claim against you in the first place? And if you were charged of a felony, state the consular venue upon that was entered in the jurisdiction from which the charge was made and solidified by both parties of the jurisdiction. And I suggest that that did not take place. Therefore, I also suggest that the claim of you being a felon of any damn thing is a fraud. And it doesn't mean that you didn't create or that you didn't do an injury. Do you understand? But if you lack due process, the claim is fraud. However, even if it stood, it doesn't steal your birthright. Keep that in mind. Birthright's intact.
Okay, Pasha XZGL says, what happened to all these Asian assassins that are supposed to assist the Moors in the recovery of our estates, quoted from Grand Sheik Taj Tarik?
That would be a good question. When you look at all of our people now, let's look at our family members. How many are family members that you can look back that went to the Vietnam War, Korean War, Panama?
Asian assassins?
We're Asiatics.
Okay.
We're Africans, Asiatics. We're Asiatics. Which means, this is what I'm saying is, a lot of people that want to help us have a problem with us insisting on being black and insist on going to and fro the earth, devouring our own brothers and sisters, helping this hybrid fake European conquer other nations and then looking for them to come help us. Use your common sense and then ask where they are, and then ask again in consideration some of the forgiving work that needs to be done on multiple fronts, and recognize that we have not been in honor. However, we're trying to get there now, aren't we? The sooner we do, the sooner the world come to our aid. They've been coming to our aid anyways, just that our people don't recognize it now. They don't recognize a lot of the politics, the economic killing of U.S. Treasury bonds is also the rest of the world coming to our aid. Because all war is not hot fire.
Let me see. Other questions. Someone says, why not? Who said that? Where'd it go? I think I saw it says, is this considered publication? I'm not sure if they're asking what we're doing, what you're doing right now is considered publication. Maybe it's a question, maybe it's a response to something else. Someone says, why not open an Aboriginal, I saw that, oh, Lance Ross L. Why not open an Aboriginal title company?
Good. Haven't we been doing it for everybody else? You know, it's like, you know, and when these things come to you, it shows you the assignments that the ancestors are presenting to us. You see? Mm-hmm. So, you know, like, it's sort of like when ideas come to you, it shows you that nature is telling us what our jobs are. And again, you know, like we talked very often, Dr. Naila, if our people put as much effort in to bringing remedies to the problems that we have as we have been to doing mosque, church, and synagogues, etc., half these social, political, and spiritual problems that exist among us wouldn't exist. They would have been cured. Right. But we have neglected our civilization responsibilities, referred to as civics. And therefore, we have been incompetent in areas where we're often seeking remedy. You know what I mean? But that's an observation of the collateral damage.
Okay. Mercedes Dickerson says Castro's nationalization of Cuba was a strategic move, as he is a descendant of Pope Innocent III.
That is true.
Research finding of law.
That is true.
Yeah.
And isn't it back to the fact that members of the Roman Curia and that the Unam, Sanctum, and Doctrine of Discovery operations have been contaminating, you know, at least 90% of the world, which we said earlier. We're aware of that. However, in the conversation, we were talking about the principle of nationalization, its political application.
Torin said, what is birthright?
Birthright is that which is divine, is not legislated. It's not an ens legis. It is by divine of your physical and actual existence coming from the womb of your mother. Those are the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that are expressed in documents, but are actually philosophical Sunni principles, etc., dealing with nature's law, nature's God, distinguished from legislated things, and thus are related to what is usually referred to as unalienable rights, which means no lien can be placed upon them because you can't buy it. This is why, or you'll hear statements like Noble Drawley says nationality is free.
Khalifa Javed Bey, peace, says our people would stop using fiat, but no one is revealing to our people after they nationalize the lawful way to live off of trust. Too many unlawful wrong processes are being taught.
And look at this. This is the point. The fact that you're moving in the direction of trust is a learning process, because we've been out of the loop of structured government for quite some time. All structured government are absolutely operating in the venues of trust in the state. Now, I'm not defending anything or anyone that's misrepresenting anything. However, all of our people should learn trust law because it's how government operates. And the offices that are held are called offices of trust. Therefore, fundamentals of trust should have been taught to all of the people. And it's now that's distinguished from someone misrepresenting anything, if you get the whole point. And my view on this is people who have been held outside of government structure for generations, some and many being on a learning curve, are going to try different methodologies for cure. Some will be not correct, some will be flawed. But the fact that the people are being made cognizant of it, this is where we should exercise our five senses and make those corrections. So if one identifies something that someone is doing incorrectly, then that's your position to interject. And because if you identify as wrong, then that means you know what's right.
Right.
And so interject that and then do your part to make things better for our people.
Makes sense. Asa Seymour Bay says, asks, what is so significant about Florida for Trump to move here? I guess they're
Florida. Everybody knows that Florida is the land of flowers. The hybrid Europeans always call Florida, or the land of flowers, the land of milk and honey, or the fountain of youth. Yes, because we've always had the exotic plants that you can find in all areas in the land of flowers. Also, at the tip of land of flowers, you have the experience of the tropics, the clear waters. You have a clear jumping port, and there's also, people are not aware of it, but there was also a bridge that's actually under the water.
A land bridge.
Yeah, land bridge that actually goes from there, from Florida, or on the other side, and also to the South Gate. So Florida has always been a strategic land area, and a jump-off port for world trade too.
Would it have anything also to do with the fact that the governor there is a Republican governor and open to?
Well, you can look at that as more of a modern iteration, but let's look at it more in the context of its actual strategic. And then you have a lot of the Shakums of the Elis Moors and Seminole were in that area too, with the Powhatani
Confederation. What would that have to do with Trump moving there? Well, he has this
a lot of the hybrid Europeans was taken over that area because of its lush agricultural land and strategic location, and generally pleasant yearly atmosphere. Generally, that's the major reason, because it's a beautiful place to live.
Deal with snow and craziness.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Harris L. I don't know where they're domiciled, but they said we have been seeing a lot of extraterrestrial beings in the sky lately. Is an invasion coming soon?
Put it this way: there's never been a time that we haven't been dealing with them, so there's nothing soon. You can look at things from a point of whether or not certain interactions will be reinitiated that have been blocked previously for some time. Part of it being because of our necessarily evolutionary development and regeneration and preparation for extended reintroduction to what you would call a broader range of inner and outer terrestrial operations, meaning that a little more civilizing needed to be done here. Meaning we had a lot of broken souls here.
So, King Flicks put a quote here from Ho Chi Minh: "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other."
That's the point. There we go. That's back to the Berber tripping.
We are
Berber
one.
gypsies.
Yeah.
See, just like as an example, we've allowed the hybrids to tell us that the Chinese, i.e., came here to the Maghreb to help build the railroads after the hybrid Europeans, 1492 came here and took over from the Moors and stuff like that, when actually the Atini or the Manchurians, etc., have been here with us for thousands of years. Our concepts about a lot of things are wrong.
Khalifa El said that Nobdu Ali said our brothers from the East would help us. Please explain.
All right. He says, the time will come and you'll be walking down the street and you'll see a $20 bill on the pavement and won't waste your time to bend over and pick it up. Industry will come to a screeching halt.
Wow.
But when it starts up again, it will start up in favor of the Asiatics. Look at that and answer your question.
So, did he also say that they would all help? They would teach.
They've already been doing it. Remember, it is not new news, but we've been telling people for quite some time, for years and years and years, that the Asiatic world would stop buying the U.S. Treasury bond, which has been used since the 1860s as a foundation for the operations of the United States Corporation Company, which has been promoted falsely as the country since the country has been conquered. When the world stops buying the U.S. Treasury bond, which is really human stock instruments and bottomry instruments, that their economic system of human traffic would be interrupted and you would start having a feedback loop. And we re-emphasize that particularly in these last 7 or 8 years, and what you see is that manifesting right now. As Asia and Africa, and you might have heard these terms, this acronym called BRICS nation as an example, and that's not the only one. Those are those operations. By default of those operations, by both goodwill and also by cause and effect consequence, the U.S. corporation is being dismantled. By virtue of that, the estate of the Moors is being released. Among us are men and women who want to help and are doing what they can, putting their necks on the line to help fallen humanity. And this includes even some of the hybrid sons and daughters of hybrid Europe to bring remedy. And as the Prophet Noble Ali said, in relationship to the Moorish divine and national movement, he made a statement along this lines. He said, help me in my great missionary work to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution for the United States of America. He's talking about the honesty confederation rules, not the concepts that you see or what they've been telling you about John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, James Barkley as an agent in business. They're talking about the rule of the principles of Constitution principles, not just with the allodial principles of recognition of human rights, etc., but also the Constitution of the salts and the phosphates and the foodstuffs that are harmonic with the constitution of the body, in harmony with fatwa and Moorish customs and principles. And in a statement, metaphor, it would be said, turn your hearts back to your mothers and fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. And this is what you're seeing now.
Okay, here's a Sugar One says, how important is discussing Traficant's statement on the U.S. Chapter 11 to our youth to understand the current state of play with the global politics?
The importance of it is because when you're looking at the House Journal records, you'll see that when you're people like yourself and others who have been trying to help our people comprehend that the United States is a private corporation that's bankrupt, that they have been trained is the country. That's what's important. Meaning that their own records show that the whole platform of their operations is a fraud, and that the United States is a corporation and not the country. See, because that mysticism and misrepresentation must be removed from the minds of the people, because for years you can tell the people de facto platforms to distinguish and make discernment from de jure. And they'll look at it and turn around and ask questions that indicate that they don't comprehend what you just said. The Traficant excerpts from his speech on the floor of the House, because actually he was talking also about James McFadden, which you will not see included in that immediate record, but that's what he's making reference to, because you already know they murdered James McFadden when he went to visit his daughter in New York.
I thought it was Traficant.
No, McFadden, Traficant's speech is referenced to that, although when you know the history, though it's not that. And so that's what makes Traficant's speech important, because it tells a lot. It even tells you that prior to 1913, all the property was held in a allodial title. So even as you already know, when our people are talking about land grants, buying and selling land, and you refer to them to Aboriginal titles and allodial titles, and most of them not only are not familiar, but won't even know what you're talking about. But yet they're talking about estate transfers, and so with Traficant's speech before the House of Representatives, it reveals a lot, including the fact that exposing the fact that the United States is operating in name only shows you again that they're de facto, and that they're actually a criminal operation. Now let's think about as an example. Can you think of any of your recent, say, corporate entities and malls across the country that went bankrupt and that are closed? You got these big, beautiful buildings closed now, with roofs leaking. Now, do you expect to walk into one of the malls and see a thriving, say, a sneak store in the middle of the place, or them having a food court in the middle of there? They're bankrupt. They're defunct. They have no business operating. This is the same thing that's going on with the United States Corporation Company now, which is also why they got barbed wire around the White House. It's the very same thing, but people don't know what they're looking at. They're defunct. They're bankrupt. They had no business operating, but they've been operating, haven't they? Now, so they're creating criminal acts against the people, and they're making rules against the people that's causing injury, aren't they? But the people need to know that these people are organized criminals. The fact that the people in general aren't aware of that, they still think these people are government officials for them to vote for, is problematic. You see? The Traficant letter exposes that too. This is again why they killed him and pretended that his tractor rolled over on him.
I'll do one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
From Victor Oluwatobi, does the Moor law apply to people in Africa, as we have a lot of Europeans?
Africans are Moors.
No, they said they have a lot of Europeans and Chinese in Africa. He's in South Africa. But he wants to know, does it apply, I guess, when it comes to Europeans, Chinese being there in Africa, like it does here?
See, this what must be understood. North America is Northwest Africa. Central America is Old Amexem, known as Olmec. South America, Southwest Africa. Asia Sol on the east side is known today as Africa. So when you're talking about the Moorish Empire, you're talking about Africa, continent as you know it now, across the Great Atlantis, even to North, Central, South America, including Mexico, which you'll see in chapter 47 of your Circle 7 Quran. And so when you're talking about the conquest of the Moors, you're talking about all the Mandinka and Bantu, Berber tribes and linguistic groups collectively are Moors. Now, when you're talking about political jurisdictions, you're having some political jurisdictions that are still intact, even though we've been occupied by hybrid Europeans. And then you have some that have been distorted, most of which are in the Western Hemisphere, which is known, as you know, as the Maghreb, Morocco, the most extreme West. So therefore, the same treaties, etc., and rules that govern the planet, and even the operations of Unam, Sanctum, and the Doctrine of Discovery that cause all this collateral damage, is on both sides because we all are one people. Anyway, thank you all for sharing with us here at the House of Reawakening Minds. Please support the House of Reawakening Minds because it's in place to support you. I
want to just add something. We have over 1,500 people on the live stream. I think between our two sites, we had about 15 people give something. So I want to say that out of the rest of you all, hopefully you all will see fit in your heart to get us above $130 and support what we're doing to keep it going. We do appreciate you so much. And Grand Sheik, gives out of his heart. I know everyone doesn't agree with everything, that you say all the time. And, I look at some of the comments, but I know you're not bothered by the negative and so forth. And so
I use it as fuel.
Yeah. So we're just doing what it is. As Grand Sheik always said, he's doing what his mother sent him here to do.
Yep.
And I suppose I'm doing the same thing.
And this is the suggestion. Since we're all allegedly trying to help our people, where you see weaknesses, introduce your strengths.
Right.
Where you see trash on the pavement, let's not talk about the program of trash picking up. Bend over and pick that trash up.
Absolutely.
And understand every one of us have the responsibility to contribute to the uplifting of fallen humanity. It is not done. This is not the age of follow the leader type thing. It is the age for all of us to take our places among the affairs of men and to come together harmonically, recognize that the positions that we have found ourselves in to the negative has been because most of us have sat on our butts waiting for everyone else to do the work. And we sit back and armchair judge them rather than contribute to the work that's necessary for all of us.
Absolutely. We appreciate you. I just want, if it's all right, Grand Sheik, I have an event coming up on Sunday, and if I can just put my little promo up for that.
Oh, yes.
I just want to say to any of you all who saw my Tuesday night show with Millionaire Mastermind.
Oh, yeah.
Millionaire Mastermind show.
That was good.
I want you to, if you signed up on Extreme FX, we want to help you get started. And I'm having a private meeting on Sunday. I've been running the banner. If you would like to be a part of that, I want you to text me the word invite, or text the word invite to 302-345-0500. I'm gonna put this up across your face a little bit, Grand Sheik. I want you to create a new Wall Street for us, by us. We want you to be a part of this. Please text 302-345-0500 and the word invite, and I will send you this link, because I don't want you to try to have to write this down. But if you write down the number and the word invite, either if you already signed up because you need to know what's next, And if you haven't signed up and you want to know what this is all about and get involved, this is global. I don't care where you are in the world, anywhere on the planet. I don't care how old you are. If you want your children to understand this world, that this opportunity, your children can be involved, your seniors, citizens like myself, and anybody in between. So I don't care where you are, anywhere on the planet, you can be a part of this, but you need to text me, get this link, or you need to copy this link that you see down here and be with us.
And it's important for the nationals,
right?
Particularly because the nationals are the heirs. And keep in mind, the nationals are distinguished from the citizens.
Right.
The nationals are AA.
Right.
When you deal with citizens, you're dealing with A1 to 19. When you deal with nationals, you're dealing with AA. And like when you look in like the Bible, when it says every man, woman, and child must confess their own and worship under their own vine and fig tree.
Absolutely.
In the political world, that's nationalization. It's not a condemning or leaving anyone out. It's everyone claiming their mother.
Right.
It's sort of like in the political realm, when your mother is sick, she's not to be feeding her milk to everyone else's child, though she may share her milk at other times. Nationalization is in harmony with matriarchy, in harmony with nature. When the mother is sick, when the nativity is sick, when the nation is sick, the womb is sick, the healing is nativity, nationalization all over the world. Remember, nationalization is a political paradigm and dynamics that's derived from the study of nature. Absolutely. It really is. Absolutely. And so what it is saying, like, just like you have sisters, right?
Sister.
And other women have sisters. I'm just saying you still have sisters.
Right.
And say when you're home, you have your jurisdiction. She has her jurisdiction. If the children are unruly or uncivil, civics, you send them home to the mother. Right. They tearing up your yard, pulling all the stuff off and throwing it when they're not civil, international law violating. Right. You send them home. That's called nationalization. Absolutely. They took the bike, your child's bike. You say, send my bike back. That's nationalization. That's Absolutely. The resource. Political nationalization is very simple when you just look at family structure, because that's what it is.
Absolutely.
It's just on a larger scale.
I get it.
And the hybrid European living off our virtues or colonization is what? He's been doing what? Come in your house like a Trojan horse and been stealing all your resources, then killing off your family, taking your stuff. That's what it is.
Okay. Listen, we're not going to go into another lesson because we have been in the midst of the master. Yeah. I hope you all notice our new sign behind him, thinking of a master plan. You didn't even notice that.
Oh, you got some stuff.
Thinking of a master plan. You always doing that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your support. Please make sure you either go to our Cash App or to our PayPal and support House of Reawakening Minds, because we are always here to support you. We love you. We appreciate you. And we ask that you have a very pleasant evening. Don't let grand evening. Don't let all of the I know it sounds a little down sometimes when you get to but there's brighter days are coming. It depends on you.
Yeah, and we have to be honest with our people, because we don't want to project false hopes.
True.
However, we also want to project to ourselves our responsibility in that we are creators and makers of our condition.
Absolutely.
And the sooner we start taking responsibility, the sooner we can help fix things. And we've got to get out of that paradigm of looking for sacrificial lambs.
And I want to say the one last thing. I want to say this. I had an example of this. You remember yesterday. When we think in terms of working with fiat versus the other forms, the barter system came up yesterday. You remember? So yesterday I had a situation where I had to go to a new person to get my locks done. Right, and so I had a product with me when I went there to visit. When I went there to get my locks done, and he told me, he said, well, come back tomorrow and I will purchase what you have, which is the air purifier. And I thought about it I said, okay, when I got home, I thought about, wait a minute, that is two hair lock sessions.
Yeah.
So I called him up. I said, instead of you paying me for this, just put it on the books for the next 2 sessions.
You're
I'm
right.
going to bring you that. We have to learn how to barter
Yes.
and trade. And when you think in terms of it, we all have different things that we have to offer.
Now,
it hit home.
the fake and the fraudulent income was applied to your right of trade to rob you. That's why Wall Street is wealthy. They've been stealing. And the people think they're obligated to that.
Anyway, we can go on. We can go on. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for all of you who are texting in.
Declare your nationality.
Right. Texting in for the USB drive, texting in for your invite. I want to see if you get an invite, please show up at 3 p.m. or Eastern on Sunday. You don't want to miss this. Thank you so much. We love you. And we are getting ready to sign off.
Peace.
Peace.